Can I introduce? Can I do what I want? Luis, can I do what I want? It's actually John supposed to do the intro. I'm being interviewed.
Yeah, we're gonna start with costumes, and I'll introduce.
Origin of costumes. So I definitely grew up in a home where costumes were a part of things, and I remember my mom, just for no reason, showed up to my kindergarten class as the spelling bee, but there was no context. It was just my mom in like a bee outfit on like a Tuesday. And she came in and did that. Another really famous one was my first birthday, when my grandmother, who was living in Arizona, flew across the country, didn't tell my parents that she was coming, which was a running joke in our family years after that, dressed up as a Smurf. So she, like Tobias Funke in Arrested Development, she like painted blue with a little hat, and she walks in, and I answered the door. I'm like this tall, and she says, "Do you know who it is?" And I said, "It's my beau." And I said, "Do you want to go upstairs and see my toys?" So I'm like taking her upstairs. My mom was like, "Who the hell is this blue woman that's walking into the house with my kid?" And didn't find out until later that it was her mom. But I have always loved the idea that you can embody just another character, and there's like all this creativity with costumes, and they're highly personal. How you interpret your costume. And I know that there's a bunch of people, actually Janet Smith, my colleague, who's going to be interviewed later, I'm going to out her as a costume hater, but she is not down with it.
Yeah, my experience is wildly different in that I was 4 and I was going to go trick-or-treating, and our next door neighbor jumped out from behind a bush wearing a mask and like scared the hell out of me. And I ran back away from my dad and from this guy, ran back inside, refused to go trick-or-treating, and I've never really liked costumes since.
That was it. That was
it. That was the one experience that I got.
So what would we have to do to change that for you?
I don't know.
Like
should have gone to the costume party last night and enjoyed it. Maybe
that was pretty good. I was dressed up as Luigi.
Nice.
Because of Mario and Luigi. Luigi's definitely the.
Seeing Keegan in a hedgehog costume was helpful.
He did. I told him he was pasty Sonic, which was probably not nice, but it just came from my heart. Like that's what came out instantly. No, the costume party was really fun. We were there for idea night, and Kate Miffett and Keegan Longwheeler said, let's take this idea of looking at diversity, inclusion, equity, and access, and having a fundraiser for a scholarship, and amping it up from just desserts and networking and turning it into a dance party with costumes. And I just loved like all the DIY energy around costumes too. Like that's another thing. I love a purchased costume, but a homemade costume is also really cool in its own. It can be terrible.
Yeah.
But there were some great ones. And this one woman, she made all these feathers all over her body. I think it was supposed to be sort of like a Native American type of thing, but I took it more of like a Brazilian sort of samba dancer.
Yeah.
And but she had all of her clothes on too, which is also sort of weird for a Brazilian samba dancer.
Samba piece, yeah.
Yeah. So like sweatshirt and then feathers, which was really phenomenal. But favorite costume of all time was probably my Queen of Hearts costume that I made, and I spent a lot of time doing all of the pieces and putting that together, and that was really nice. So hindsight being 2020, or if there is a costume party at OLC Innovate 2020, I could probably bring that costume and wear that one, and that would be totally fine by me. But the costume that I am most famous for is a Cleopatra costume. It was a purchased one, but I did the makeup really well and everything. We went to this big party in New York City. We would go to the Village Parade, the West Village Parade, and they would always have an after party at some sort of thing. So we go to this party. We're at this old bank that they've turned into a nightclub, and Rev Run was a guest for the evening.
This party had everything.
It had everything. It had just like Stefan. New York's hottest club is OLC Innovate, Gaylord Rockies man. So we go to the club. Rev Run walks in. Dennis is dressed up as Slick Rick, which is also really strange and disconcerting. And all of these Japanese tourists, they made him so mad because they came up and they were like, "Oh, you're the Burger King king. Take a picture with us." And he was like, "I'm not the Burger King king. I'm Slick Rick." And then he would just like pose for the picture. So he like destroyed parts of his costume like on the way to the club, like in the subway, because he was so angry about the thing. So he was already not in a good mood. Rev Run walks in with his posse, and he is just like staring at me, will not stop staring. Like he knows me and he's upset that I'm not recognizing that we know each other. And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, I know you, but I don't know you, you know? So he's like, okay, fine. He kind of like wakes out of a daze. He goes in, he DJs, he does the set. Hour and a half later, he's walking out. As he's walking out, he's staring at me again. Like, what is going on? So now Dennis is really upset. He's like, do I have to beat up Rev Run? You know, because this is like escalating in a way that is making everybody uncomfortable. And Rev Run's posse sees Dennis and they're like, do we have to beat up the Burger King chain right now? And they finally parted ways and it was totally fine. But we've had, like, when we were living in New York, we had 3 other instances where different celebrities, Delroy Lindo, Cuba Gooding Jr., if y'all are watching OLC Live right now, call in and explain to us like what happened, but did the same thing with me. And Cuba Gooding Jr., I had an eye patch on, so like it was, I don't know what the connection was. Like maybe my doppelganger also wears an eye patch and she kind of looks like Cleopatra. But yeah, same thing with all 3 of them. So I don't know who my real identity is.
But just to be clear, Dennis did not beat up any of these celebrities that you know of, or at least while you were watching.
While I was watching on Halloween, actually, no, he's legitimately a lover, not a fighter, but he will defend the honor of Cleopatra at any given point.
Well, on that note, I'm here with Angela Gunder, and this is OLC Live. I'm John Stewart. We're here in Denver this year at OLC Innovate, and we've been here for a few days, but one of the places that at least I spend most of my time, and I keep finding you, is the Innovation Studio. And so can you tell us what the Innovation Studio is now, what it has been, and what it will be?
Yeah, so I think that Keegan talked to Sunday a little bit about the space already. The origins of it go way back. So John and I are good friends, but he's a historian. I am arguably not a historiophile. Is that what y'all call somebody that loves history?
Yeah.
Okay. So
OLC file.
Yeah, I guess I love history when it's on a topic that I really care about. So, and this is one of them. Several years ago now, the Technology Test Kitchen was formed by a couple of people. Felice Banner, Frank Tomsick, and Clark Shaw Nelson was actually part of that initial group, one of your hosts for OLC Live. And they wanted to create spaces for people to interact with technology, digital learning, and really effective practices in a lightweight, low-key way that was very different than sort of like the sit and get style presentations. So they created an installation, exploratory installation, and then those kept on progressing and growing. And when I sort of entered the scene was when Ben Scragg, Dave Goodrich, and I created this thing called the Innovation Lab. And it was an iteration off of some of the themes that came up within the Technology Test Kitchen. It was built around design thinking. And we've been synergistic throughout these years, giving and taking all sorts of pieces and really emphasizing a remix culture. So what ended up happening with the space is that they put together all sorts of like booths almost that people could go in and talk to different experts. You could come in with challenges that you were working on and really take some time to dig in with somebody who could show you around a problem that you might be having and actually pull like physical resources to help you solve whatever that problem was. So everything that we purport about teaching and learning being constructivist, we're approaching it from the same angle within the conference as a professional development piece. Like how can we have constructivist professional development in these organic spaces?
Yeah, I don't know if that's where I met Ryan, but Ryan Straight and I served in one of these booths doing, talking about games, gamification, game-based learning, playing games a couple of years ago now. And then of course, Keegan Longwheeler ran the Innovation Lab last year. And then now Cindy Richard is running the Innovation Studio. And so yeah, one of our favorite spaces.
And I think it's really compelling too that both you and Ryan are experts in this field of gameful learning, and you're incorporating these principles in both your teaching, your mentorship of other folks that are around you. And if it weren't for that space, you might not have connected in the same way that you did. Like you might see each other's citations online, or you might hear from another scholar who said, hey, you should check out what that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have heard from you. You should meet this Ryan guy. And I'm like, okay. And then I would have forgotten.
I would have been me in a costume saying, Ryan's got an amazing costume. Also, you guys have a lot in common. Actually, I'm getting in trouble lately for introducing everybody as my favorite human, that I need to have like a lookbook or something that says favorite humans of Angela. And like, there'll be different size pictures based on how favorite
they are. Good coffee table book. Yeah.
I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that the one thing that also that I get out of those types of spaces is that I pretty well know how I like to use gamification in a class. I know a couple of examples of how faculty that I work with have used it, but I love talking to people from wildly different fields, and from people who are in nursing schools, and people who are in medical schools and in agricultural schools, and all of these different applications where I don't know how it applies to them. And so I can talk to them about, here's how I've used it, here's some ideas, and then we can sort of work together, and I get to see, brand new things, born in front of me.
Yeah.
And then they take them back and fix them up.
It's interesting. I was talking to Jerry Hanley, the executive director of Merlot, about OER. We have the 5 R's of OER from Wiley, and Jerry says that remix piece, like, we don't always get to it in a really nice way. And I think that the Innovation Studio and spaces like the Innovation Studio are the embodiment of remix culture. It should be lightweight, it should be collaborative, and it just gives people the opportunity to build without feeling like there's all of these rules and hang-ups to changing and coming up with new solutions.
When we introduced a new format at OLC Innovate this year, that we're trying to take a pause in the middle of presentation. So you present for 30 minutes and then there's a 5 minutes for reflection. And it was because we wanted that time to reflect and to think about how you would remix whatever it is that the speaker's talking about. And it was because, traditionally you go into a talk, you hear it for 20 or 45 minutes, and then you leave and you go on to the next thing. And often we don't have time to think about how
the reflection is scheduled for when you're like sifting through your email at home, and it's gone. And it might not come back until years later. So it's like, hey, let's actually physically work on these problems while we're in the spaces.
I think that's one of the things Innovate does better than at least any of the history and non-education conferences that I've been to. Is just, we don't make spaces in those types of conferences for reflection and remixing.
Well, I would say that they've definitely given us the latitude to create different types of unique spaces. One of the needs that we had last year at OLC Accelerate, it was the first instantiation of this, was a way for people to network in a lightweight type of way. I constantly go to Ben Scragg for help with like networking advice. I don't necessarily feel like I have a problem meeting people per se, but imparting to other folks who might think that they're introverts, if you believe in introverts and extroverts, or people that might be reticent to go up and talk to friendly faces. How can we make networking meaningful and impactful for folks that might be reticent to do so? So we ended up creating the Speed Networking Lounge around this concept that he shared, which was think about networking as simple as asking for directions. Like, hey, John, like, can you help me with this particular topic? And you are free to say, you know what, I don't know anything about that, and like keep it moving. But you could also be like, I don't know anything about that, but you should really talk to this person over here. Or I do know about it, like, let's pull up a chair, talk for 5 minutes, and then on to the next thing too. So we said, how could we create a space in the conference? And it's funny because these two spaces, the Innovation Studio and the Speed Networking Lounge, are right next to each other.
I think that's really useful. Just that geography and being able to pull from the Innovation Studio to be able to say, like, here's the person you should be talking to right now.
Like, there's a pool of like brilliant folks that are willing to help, and they're over here. So we're right next to the Innovation Studio, and the Speed Networking Lounge is set up so that folks can drop in, and they get these lounge passes that have a series of pro-social activities on them. And I was joking, like, I was reflecting before this conference, wow, this has to be probably the easiest way that you can win a prize in the exhibit hall. It's like, go have a cup of coffee with a new colleague. Actually, it was cocoa, or like the trail mix. We had a trail mix buffet that you could go to. Or it's like, play a game of bananagrams, or I forget how to say it. There's it's called Moby. They're bananagrams tiles, but they're numbers and mathematical symbols.
Nice.
So you can do all sort of like mathematical equations, but the same rules as bananagrams, which I played for the first time.
Yeah, I heard that Keegan beat you in bananagrams.
If you want to see a great picture on Twitter, Keegan beat me in the true awesomeness. Like, none of his words were legit. Keegan immediately said to me that his wife would be gravely disappointed in some of the words that he played, like shoe, with like 7 O's after it. But I couldn't help but smile at what he did, even though I was the technical winner. There was no joy in the technical win.
Yeah. Spelling is not Keegan's strong point. So
this is being recorded, so that this dude said that.
There's a reason I take the notes in our office. But so the Speed Networking Lounge, is that still ongoing through today and tomorrow, or is it wrapping up?
Yeah, so actually it'll be in 2 networking breaks tomorrow, so people can pop in there. Rick Franklin's playing music in the space.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Probably my favorite thing about it is that there are these dry erase boards with open-ended questions that folks can answer. And one of my favorite ones is just, I wish online education was ... So if you're watching this back and you're on Twitter and you want to pop in your answer to that question of what you wish education was, we'll put it on the dry erase boards in the Speed Networking Lounge and share that out with folks, because my answer changes all the time. I wish, like right now, I wish online education was more joyful. I think that quite often it's pretty sterile. It's systematic. People are thinking about like how to scale these things, and like the embodiment of personality and just delight and wonder and curiosity, like all the things that keep us working in higher ed.
Yeah, we're really good at meeting minimal thresholds and making it like good, but like, getting it to that exciting or just new or different is not really what we're designing for.
It's the first thing that we cut out. Like, just think about the first thing that you remember, like being in a class and like you had this transformative moment of, I didn't get it for like a solid how many weeks, and like I had all the tools and people giving me the tools to put it together, but I had to put it together. And the moment that I put it together, it was like the light bulb literally went off. So mine was drawing ramen with charcoal. And I had a professor who was trying to teach me that lines don't exist. It's just the opposition of light and dark. And I never understood that in my drawing practice, and my drawing suffered because of it. And there was this one day that we had to draw blocks of ramen, and they had like light shining on the ramen. And I'm sitting there with my compressed charcoal drawing. It's like, there are no lines! There are no lines! And it was the most fantastic thing. It was really great. And I look at my professor, he could care less. He was just walking around like, holding like a dinosaur. Like he had like a little plastic dinosaur and was like, whatever. But for me, it was so personal. I mean, I was thankful to him, but I was also like so excited that that was my doing.
I like this eureka moment with a block of ramen.
I didn't even eat it or anything. Like it was just like, hey, let's draw some ramen. I think I still have that picture, and I know my husband's gonna watch this because he watches all my stuff, even though this is not his field. And I know he's probably gonna try to find that picture and frame it. And I'm gonna be horrified if we have a picture of a horrible, horrible picture of ramen in our house. But that might end up happening. So
it's a solid memory.
Yeah.
One of those things that is hard to duplicate in online.
What's yours? Do you have one, or you were just like
transformative? My main memories of graduate school is I met my wife there, and so the transformation was we argued nonstop for the first like 3 classes we were in, and then we eventually realized that we loved each other, and then we got married. So there's a transformation of me thinking that I was right about history to recognizing that she was right about history and everything else.
Were you both right?
No, I'm sure she was just right. She was.
I'm glad that this is being recorded, but I know you well enough to know that you would have said that even if it wasn't recorded.
Yeah. With her also, like when I went in, my advisor told me that I was the second best writer he'd ever met as an undergrad. And I was like, that's awesome. And he's like, yeah, do you know this person named Lisa? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, you will. Yeah. So yeah, he'd been teaching for 30 years, but apparently my wife was the only person that was better.
So did you two bond over that?
Yeah. I like that story.
Just being fantastic writers?
She's genuinely a fantastic writer. I think he was just.
Yeah, but that aside, like this arbitrary person, this arbitrary human on this earth who just so happened to interact with the two of you, gave you a ranking system that doesn't mean anything to anybody really. I mean, it's just a story.
Yeah.
But that ranking system
is us two.
Is just you two.
Yeah. But he was my advisor. It's like your dad being like, yeah, she's way better than you.
That's fantastic.
My dad said that too, but like, it's.
And like in a way of pride.
Yeah. So anyway, transformative experiences in college. I do worry. And part of what we work a lot on in our office is how do we maintain connectivity in online spaces. We use a lot of synchronous classes and Zoom, and trying to have something like a face-to-face experience, digitally mediated, and how do we maintain some of those bright spots in education as we move into into the realm of technology. Yeah, I think we can do all sorts of. There are great affordances of technology and ways that we can connect that. Across country, you and I connect on a nearly daily basis across country. and so we just have to make sure that we are being creative and keeping that joy in the online space.
And inclusive. I think that's the other piece too. You know, you sort of lean on the same folks, but finding ways to find out new stories, learn from new people, and just being open to that too. It's a challenge. It's really hard. And I think that, you know, our jobs ask us to do a whole lot more. But those collaborations are essential. That's sort of like the thing that you don't shortchange. Like we talk about fitness, like your gym routine is usually the first to go, you know, or you're eating garbage, but it's important and you need to do it and make time for it and make it your job. I think that our connections and our collaborations are so essential to us being able to do our jobs well, and really fighting groupthink is a big part of that too.
Yeah, fighting groupthink and being able to rely on the group to help you out, but also fighting the challenges that we find. But I was talking about this over lunch with the co-program chair Kate Sonka, and we were saying that OLC really is the connections that you make here. It's the people that you meet here, and that you can then rely on those people when I need to know anything about accessibility. If I don't know it, you know, at my fingertips, I contact Kate.
And she just so happens to be one of the world's, she would never say this and would get mad at me saying it, but one of the world's experts on this topic within the digital spaces especially.
And I met her here, and I only know her because I came here. If I'm doing something on gamification that I don't know and that Keegan doesn't know, I can contact Ryan. Yeah. And Ryan will almost certainly know, or he'll point me to another source. And we were joking that for literally everything else, we contact Angela.
Well, but I'm the broker. It's not, that I have the answer. It's just that I know people who know people.
Via segue back to the networking lounge.
Yes.
Angela networks better than everybody I know, and can connect us to anyone. And so Angela is one step away from Kevin Bacon and everybody else too.
I've never met Kevin Bacon, but he might stare at me like he knows me.
And then Dennis can beat him up.
And then Dennis can beat Kevin Bacon up.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
We were going to go to the relaxation lounge next door, to the
Serenity
spa,
Lodge, yeah.
But we're going to find Kevin Bacon instead, and then we'll go to the Serenity Lodge later on. So for now, we'll go ahead and sign off and go find some bacon.